The dimly lit living room of the Morales family was eerily silent, save for the faint hum of an old refrigerator in the corner. Maria Morales, her hands trembling slightly, leafed through a pile of overdue bills on the coffee table. Her youngest son, Alex, sat cross-legged on the floor, gluing the sole of his worn-out sneaker together. Shadows of exhaustion etched into Maria's face as she sighed deeply, the weight of their financial struggles pressing down on her like an invisible anchor. Maria Morales had always been the backbone of her family. A petted woman in her mid-40s, her weathered hands bore testament to years of labor, cleaning houses by day and working nights at a local diner. Her thick black hair was streaked with strands of gray, tied back in a hurried bun as she tried to keep her home running. The Morales family lived in a cramped two-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of Austin, Texas. Paint peeled off the walls, and the scent of dampness lingered, a constant reminder of the landlord's neglect. Maria's children, 12-year-old Alex and his 16-year-old sister Sophia, shared a room barely large enough for their bunk beds. The walls were adorned with handmade posters, Sophia's affirmations scrawled in marker. Keep going, even when it's hard. A silent mantra she repeated to herself during countless study sessions. Alex, on the other hand, had crafted a paper rocket taped to his corner of the wall, a symbol of the dreams he clung to despite their circumstances. That evening, Maria sat at the wobbly kitchen table, her hands clasped tightly around a mug of lukewarm coffee. The bills in front of her spelled out disaster. Electricity, gas, rent, each one stamped with angry red notices. The diner where she worked had cut her hours the previous month, and no matter how many extra cleaning jobs she picked up, it never seemed to be enough. Sophia sat at the kitchen counter, headphones on, furiously typing an essay on her outdated laptop, which groaned under the weight of even the simplest tasks. Alex was huddled in a corner of the living room, repairing his shoes with glue Maria had bought from the dollar store. Though the family tried to hold on to small moments of joy, an impromptu dance party in the kitchen, laughter over Alex's terrible jokes, there was no denying the grimness of their situation. Maria's every movement was weighed down by worry. She had prayed for a miracle so many times, but as the weeks dragged on, her hope dimmed. Still, she never let her children see her break. Her strength was their strength, even when her own felt like it was slipping away. Tonight, however, Maria would find out that someone had noticed their silent struggle, someone who had the means and the heart to change their lives forever. It began like any other ordinary evening, except for the unexpected knock at the door. The sound startled Maria, breaking the fragile quiet of the apartment. She exchanged a quick glance with Sophia, who had already removed her headphones, her brow furrowed in curiosity. Visitors were rare. Most people in their lives barely had time for small talk, let alone unannounced visits. Maria stood cautiously, smoothing her faded apron as she approached the door. Peeking through the peephole, she saw a delivery man in a crisp uniform standing in the dimly lit hallway. In his hands was a large, sleek black envelope with a silver seal embossed on the front. It looked entirely out of place against the chipped paint and rusting door frames of their apartment building. Mrs. Morales, the man asked when Maria finally opened the door, her apprehension masked by politeness. Yes, that's me, she replied hesitantly. This is for you, he said, extending the envelope. I was instructed to deliver it personally. No signature needed. Maria stared at the envelope in her hands as the man walked away. It was unnervingly elegant, with an unfamiliar weight to it. Her heart raced as she brought it into the living room, where Alex had already sprung to his feet. His curiosity piqued. What is it, Mom? Sophia asked, standing at her mother's side. Maria's fingers fumbled as she broke the silver seal and pulled out a letter, printed on thick, expensive paper. Her eyes widened as she read the first few lines. The room seemed to shrink and her knees felt weak. Sophia reached out to steady her. Mom, what's wrong? Sophia's voice was laced with concern. Maria's lips trembled as she read aloud, her voice barely above a whisper. Dear Mrs. Morales, I hope this message finds you well. I've been made aware of the incredible challenges you and your family have faced. Please accept this as a gesture of support. Enclosed is a check that I hope will ease your burdens. No repayment is necessary. Best regards, Elon Musk. The words hung in the air, almost too surreal to believe. Maria reached into the envelope with shaky hands and pulled out a check. Her breath caught when she saw the amount. $250,000. For a long moment, the family was silent. Alex's jaw dropped, and Sophia covered her mouth with her hands, tears streaming down her face. Maria clutched the check tightly, her emotions a storm of disbelief, gratitude, and overwhelming relief. Is this real? Sophia finally managed to ask, her voice trembling. Maria could only nod, her tears falling freely now. I, I don't know why he chose us, she stammered. But this changes everything. The tiny apartment which had felt suffocating just minutes ago suddenly seemed lighter, brighter. For the first time in years, Maria allowed herself to hope, to believe that perhaps someone out there had seen their struggle and decided they mattered. The envelope, the letter, and the check marked a turning point, an unforeseen moment of grace in their darkest hour. But the real journey was only beginning. The initial wave of disbelief and joy quickly gave way to a torrent of emotions that Maria hadn't anticipated. As the check rested on the kitchen table, its presence tangible yet surreal, doubt began to creep into her mind. Could it be a scam? Could someone be playing a cruel joke on her family? She glanced at Sophia, who had already pulled out her phone, furiously researching the validity of the letter and the source. Mom, it's real, Sophia finally said, her voice steady but her eyes still filled with wonder. The foundation mentioned in the letter. It's connected to him. Elon Musk has done things like this before, quietly helping people. Maria's shoulders sagged with relief, but almost immediately, another fear took hold. What if we mess this up? She asked, her voice cracking. What if? What if this money only causes more problems? I've heard stories about people losing themselves when they come into money. Sophia placed a reassuring hand on her mother's shoulder. Mom, we're not those people. This is a chance, a real chance for us to get out of this hole. We'll be smart about it. But Maria couldn't shake the weight of her doubts. For years, her identity had been tied to sacrifice and struggle. The thought of finally being able to breathe, to dream without the constant burden of survival, felt almost foreign. She wasn't sure who she was without the relentless grind to keep her family afloat. And then there was the fear of being judged by neighbors, by family, by people who wouldn't understand why they had been chosen. Externally, the challenges were no less daunting. The Morales family had lived on the brink of poverty for so long that the idea of managing such a large sum of money was overwhelming. Maria had never written a check for more than a few $100s, let alone dealt with banks or financial advisors. She feared making mistakes, trusting the wrong people, or squandering the opportunity that had been handed to them. Mom, we'll figure it out together, Sophia said, her voice calm but resolute. This isn't just about the money. It's about what we can do with it. For us. For Alex. Maria nodded, swallowing hard as she looked at Alex, who was holding his repaired sneaker in one hand and staring at the check in awe. She could see the flicker of hope in his young eyes, a hope she hadn't seen in years. The first real test came just days later when Maria walked into a bank to deposit the check. The teller's polite but skeptical glance made her palms sweat. She could feel the weight of her old insecurities, her worn clothes, her calloused hands, pressing down on her in a place where people wore crisp suits and spoke with confidence. Her heart pounded as she handed over the check, half expecting the teller to laugh and tell her it was fake. Instead, the teller smiled and said, "It'll take a few days to clear, but congratulations, Mrs. Morales." Maria exhaled deeply, clutching the receipt in her hand as she stepped out of the bank. It was real. The money was real. And now, the challenge wasn't just to survive. It was to learn, to plan, and to build something lasting for her family. But the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Maria would have to confront her own fears and insecurities, navigate unfamiliar systems, and make decisions she'd never imagined herself capable of making. It was the fight of her life, but this time, for the first time, she wasn't fighting alone. The days that followed were a whirlwind for Maria and her family. For the first time, their conversations at the dinner table weren't about stretching a bag of rice for another week or cutting corners to pay the electric bill. Instead, they talked about possibilities, words that felt strange yet invigorating on their tongues. Still, Maria knew that before she could even think about spending a dime, she had to make a plan. This gift was more than money, it was a second chance, and she wasn't about to squander it. Maria spent her first sleepless night after the check cleared writing down everything she needed to learn: banking, budgeting, investments, words that once seemed like another language. The next morning, she walked into the library, a place she hadn't visited in years. Armed with a notebook and an old pen, she scoured books and online resources about personal finance. Sophia joined her, offering the kind of encouragement only a teenager with unshakable optimism could muster. "We've got this, Mom," she said, smiling as she helped her mother set up an appointment with a financial advisor. That meeting proved to be a turning point. Sitting in a modest office across from a patient advisor, Maria felt her stomach churn with anxiety. She was used to being dismissed, overlooked, just another struggling single mother. But this time was different. The advisor didn't look at her with pity or judgment. He listened carefully as Maria explained her situation, her fears, and her hopes for her children. By the end of the meeting, Maria left with a detailed plan. A portion of the money would go into savings for emergencies, another portion into a college fund for Sophia and Alex, and a third into a small business venture Maria had always dreamed of but never dared to pursue: opening a cleaning service company of her own. Starting the business was no easy feat. Maria used part of the funds to buy supplies, a second-hand van, and business licenses. But the real challenge was convincing herself that she could succeed. "Why would people trust me?" She confided in Sophia one night as they worked on designing flyers at the kitchen table. "Because you've been doing this your whole life, Mom," Sophia said, her voice steady and full of pride. "You just never got paid what you deserved for it." Bit by bit, the pieces began to fall into place. Maria started small, cleaning one house, then another. Word spread quickly about her attention to detail and the kindness she brought to her work. Within months, Maria's cleaning service became a name whispered among neighbors and friends, the family van becoming a familiar sight in their community. While Maria focused on the business, Sophia thrived academically, her dream of college now within reach. Alex, inspired by the changes in his family, poured his energy into school, his once waning enthusiasm reignited. The family's apartment, which had been a symbol of struggle, now felt like a sanctuary, a place where laughter echoed and hope blossomed. But not every day was easy. There were moments when the weight of responsibility threatened to pull Maria under, the fear of failing, of not living up to the generosity she'd been shown. Yet each time, she reminded herself of how far they had come, of the countless nights she'd spent crying over unpaid bills, of Alex's broken shoes, and Sophia's quiet determination. The transformation wasn't just in their financial situation. Maria began to stand taller, her voice more confident, her spirit more resolute. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was building a life, a legacy for her children. 6 months after receiving the life-changing check, Maria found herself at a crossroads, a moment that would test everything she had worked so hard to build. Business was growing faster than she had ever anticipated. What had started as a one-woman operation had expanded into a team of 3 employees, with clients requesting her services weeks in advance. But growth came with challenges. Her van, the lifeline of her cleaning business, broke down one morning as she was heading to a job. Maria stood on the side of the road, her hands trembling as she dialed a tow truck, panic bubbling in her chest. This wasn't just about a vehicle. It was a test of her resilience. The van represented more than transportation. It was the foundation of her hard-fought progress. If she couldn't meet her clients' expectations, she risked tarnishing the reputation she had worked so tirelessly to build. Old fears crept in, whispering that she might fail, that she wasn't cut out for this new life. Later that night, as the broken-down van sat in a repair shop awaiting an expensive fix, Maria gathered her children in the living room. She tried to stay strong for them, but her voice wavered as she explained the situation. "I don't know how I'm going to afford the repairs and keep everything running," she admitted, Her shoulders slumped under the weight of her worry. Mom, we'll figure it out, Sophia said, her confidence unwavering. You've come too far to let this stop you. Let's think about what we can do. Maria stayed up long after her children had gone to bed, staring at the papers spread out on the kitchen table, repair estimates, client schedules, and the dwindling balance in her business account. It felt like the same suffocating pressure she had known for years, but this time there was a difference. This time she had a choice. She could let this setback define her, or she could rise to meet it. The turning point came the next morning as she sat in her favorite corner of the library, reviewing her options. Her financial advisor's voice echoed in her memory. Setbacks are part of growth. Plan for them, adapt, and keep moving forward. Maria took a deep breath and decided to invest in her business's future. She dipped into her emergency fund to pay for the repairs, but also applied for a small business grant, something she'd been too afraid to attempt before. When the van was finally repaired and back on the road, Maria felt an overwhelming sense of relief, but more importantly, a newfound strength. That same week, she landed her first commercial cleaning contract, a deal that would secure her business for months to come. It was a moment of triumph, a reminder that resilience wasn't just about surviving setbacks, but learning to thrive despite them. Maria's children were watching her closely, and in her determination, they found their own inspiration. Alex beamed with pride as he handed out Maria's business flyers at school. Sophia began researching colleges with confidence, no longer worried about whether they could afford her dreams. Standing in front of her repaired van one evening, Maria felt the weight of the past lift ever so slightly. She realized that the van breaking down had forced her to confront her deepest fears, fears of failure, of losing everything they'd built. And she had come out stronger, proving to herself and her children that setbacks weren't the end of the road, but a chance to learn and push forward. By the end of the year, Maria's cleaning service had grown into a thriving local business, a household name in their neighborhood. She now had 5 employees, including 2 single mothers who had been in situations similar to hers. Hiring them wasn't just about growing the business. It was Maria's way of paying forward the generosity she had received. She knew what it felt like to be overlooked, struggling to survive, and she was determined to create opportunities for others to rise as she had. Her days were still busy, filled with long hours and hard work, but they carried a new kind of weight, a purposeful one. She now had systems in place to manage her finances, clients, and employees. The fear of spiraling back into poverty still lingered in the back of her mind, but it no longer paralyzed her. Instead, it fueled her determination to secure her family's future. Sophia, who had always been the steady optimist, was preparing for college applications. The dream of becoming the first in her family to attend a university now felt within reach. Maria had opened a savings account specifically for Sophia's tuition, and every time she deposited money into it, she felt a swell of pride and hope. You're going to do great things, Maria told her one evening as they sat together filling out forms. Sophia smiled, her confidence shining. Because of you, Mom. Meanwhile, Alex's rocket drawings had become more intricate, his curiosity about science growing with each passing day. Maria used part of the grant money she had received to enroll him in an after-school STEM program. Watching her son's eyes light up as he tinkered with projects, Maria knew that this wasn't just about their present. It was about building a future where her children could dream without limitations. The family's apartment, once a symbol of struggle, had been transformed into a warm and welcoming home. New furniture replaced the broken-down pieces they had clung to for years, and fresh paint covered the peeling walls. Maria made sure that every corner of their home reflected the love and resilience that had carried them through the hardest times. But it wasn't just the material changes that marked their transformation. Maria herself had changed. She was no longer the tired, hesitant woman who doubted her worth. She carried herself with quiet confidence, her chin held high, her shoulders squared. People in the community looked up to her as an example of strength and perseverance. One evening, as Maria closed the door to her business's small office after another long but fulfilling day, she paused to take it all in. She thought of where they had been just a year ago, drowning in bills, clinging to hope by a thread, and where they were now. Tears welled in her eyes as she allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. She had been given a chance, yes, but it was her grit, her faith, and the unwavering love for her children that had turned that chance into a life she could be proud of. She returned home to find Sophia studying at the kitchen table and Alex asleep on the couch, his rocket sketches strewn around him. For the first time in years, Maria felt a profound sense of peace. They were no longer just surviving, they were thriving. And she knew, deep in her heart, that this was only the beginning of a new chapter, one that she, Sophia, and Alex would write together. Late one night, after the children had gone to bed, Maria sat alone at the kitchen table, a cup of tea in her hands. The room was quiet except for the gentle hum of the refrigerator, but her thoughts were loud, swirling with memories of the past year. She thought about the endless nights she had cried herself to sleep, the mornings she had forced a smile for her children despite the dread that hung heavy in her chest. She thought about the moment the check had arrived, the disbelief and the spark of hope it had ignited. And now here she was, in a place she could hardly recognize, both in her life and in herself. Maria let her gaze wander to the family's vision board, something Sophia had insisted they make together. It hung proudly on the living room wall, filled with pictures and words that symbolized their dreams. A new home, college diplomas, a small rocket for Alex, and even a photo of a beach, a dream vacation they promised each other one day. For the first time, these dreams didn't feel impossible. They felt like promises waiting to be fulfilled. Her hands traced the edge of the cup and she smiled softly, thinking about the people who had come into her life because of this journey. The financial advisor who had guided her with patience and respect, her employees who now trusted her with their livelihoods, the loyal clients who had spread the word about her business. And of course, Elon Musk, the man she had never met, whose generosity had been the catalyst for it all. But as grateful as Maria was for the help, she knew that the real transformation had come from within. The check had been a lifeline, yes, but it was her determination to honor it, to rise to the challenge, that had changed her life. She had learned to trust herself, to push past fear, to embrace the unknown. And in doing so, she had not only created a better life for her children, but had shown them the power of resilience and courage. The next morning, Maria woke early, as she always did, to pack lunches for Sophia and Alex before school. As she placed a freshly baked muffin into Alex's bag, she noticed a crumpled paper sticking out from one of his notebooks. Unfolding it, she saw a rough sketch of a rocket with the words "Thank you, Mom" scrawled in his uneven handwriting. Tears welled in her eyes as she realized that her son saw her as his own hero, a thought that filled her heart with a pride she could barely contain. Standing by the window, watching the first rays of sunlight spill over the rooftops, Maria felt something she hadn't in years, a deep, unshakable sense of hope. Her life was no longer defined by struggle alone. It was a testament to the power of faith, hard work, and the kindness of a stranger who believed in her when she had nearly stopped believing herself. As the day began, Maria felt ready for whatever lay ahead. She had faced darkness and doubt, but she had come out stronger, not just for herself, but for Sophia, for Alex, and for the future they were building together. Her story was no longer one of despair, but one of renewal, of possibility, and of the quiet strength that had always been within her, waiting to be discovered. And as she looked out at the world, she knew this was only the beginning.